father of combatives, W.E. Fairbairn and his DEFENDU. William Ewart Fairbairn's DEFENDU system of hand-to-hand combat is based on practical experience mixed with ju-jitsu and boxing that he developed to train the Shanghai Municipal Police, and was later taught to the Office of Strategic Services, the Special Operations Executive, and the British Commandos in World War II. The illustrated manual, which bears his system's name, was first published in 1926, later reprinted in 1931. However, DEFENDU as a system would continue to develop, and we use the name here not just in reference to the book, but to Fairbairn's methods and teachings as a whole. For example, the 1926 manual contains chapters with defences against holds, disarms, holds, throws and edge-of-hand blows. It also references use of the baton or club, walking stick, effective knots useful for tying up an opponent, and the art of falling without being hurt. Subsequent tomes would discuss and teach other methods that Fairbairn worked on, for example, use of the knife or pistol in close quarters. Gutter fighting. At the heart of Fairbairn's system was his notion of gutter fighting. As he stated, "Get tough, get down in the gutter, win at all costs. I teach what is called gutter fighting. There's no fair play, no rules except one, kill or be killed." Shanghai Service. Fairbairn in his day was one of the most experienced close combat instructors the world had yet seen. As a teenager, he had enlisted with the British Royal Marines and gained heaps of experience in Korea and China in a variety of fighting methods. After leaving the Royal Marines, Fairbairn made his way to Shanghai, China, and joined the Shanghai Municipal Police Force, the SMP, of the international settlement. At this time, in 1907, Shanghai was probably one of the most dangerous cities in the world. The international settlement in which Fairbairn was a police constable was a notorious hotbed of criminality that included Tong gangs, drug smuggling, assassination, prostitution and kidnapping. The Tongs were infamous for their so-called hatchet men and were brutal in the extreme. One day, whilst on foot patrol in one of the red light districts, Fairbairn was set upon by a Tong gang. Near-death experience. Fairbairn was stabbed a dozen times by the Tongs and left for dead, bleeding out in a dark alleyway in the back streets of Shanghai. Except that William Fairbairn didn't die. Amazingly, he recovered from this near-death experience and seems to have resolved from that point on to make it his life's work to inquire ever deeper into and really master the most effective and practical methods of combat, fit for surviving the reality of the streets. To this end, Fairbairn quickly became a student of Professor Okada, a Japanese jiu-jitsu expert in Shanghai who was once personal instructor to the Emperor of Japan. Over his 3 decades of service in the SMP, Fairbairn studied and became proficient in all the martial arts he was exposed to. He was even inducted into the Kodokan in Tokyo in 1918, receiving his coveted black belt in 1926. His certificate signed by the legendary founder of Judo, Jigoro Kano himself. Fairbairn rose through the ranks of the SMP and was charged with the duty of instructing firearms and with hand-to-hand combat. He completely revised the firearms training and instituted a method that reflected the actual conditions of real gunfighting. Fairbairn passed on his skills in hand-to-hand combat to the Shanghai Municipal Police and also, interestingly, went on to train the United States 4th Marine Regiment, known as the China Marines. He also founded the Shanghai Riot Squad, known as the Reserve Unit. This was notable for being the world's first ever Special Weapons and Tactics unit, serving as the prototype for today's SWAT teams around the world. Fairbairn-Sykes fighting knife. Together with his friend and colleague in the SMP, Eric Anthony Sykes, Fairbairn would go on to develop the prototypes of what would become the most famous combat knife in the world, the Fairbairn-Sykes, or FS fighting knife. To quote Fairbairn in his later book, Get Tough, 1942, "There is no more deadly weapon than the knife. An entirely unarmed man has no certain defense against it, and further, merely the sudden flashing of a knife is frequently enough to strike fear into your opponent. The final product of this collaboration would be ready for serial production from November 1941. Double-edged with a narrow, tapering blade of around 6.5 to 7 inches, the Fairbairn-Sykes was primarily made to thrust deep, and was capable of penetrating the heavy greatcoat issued to Wehrmacht troops. It would prove to be deadly in the hands of all those issued it, particularly in the work of sentry removal by the Commandos in their hit-and-run raids all over Europe and North Africa. Crisis at home. W.E. Fairbairn's career with the SMP finally ended in 1940. He retired with the rank of Assistant Commissioner. During his tenure of over 3 decades, he had taken part in countless violent clashes on the streets of the international settlement. He had seen the invasion of China by the Japanese and the bloody and brutal siege of Shanghai and the surrounding provinces by the Imperial Japanese Army. He had also worked closely with the SMP's Special Branch, an intelligence gathering unit that operated covertly throughout Shanghai. All this experience would not, however, go to waste. And so Fairbairn returned to England in 1940. England had been at war with Nazi Germany for a year and was in a state of deep crisis. The retreat from France, despite the miracle of Dunkirk, was keenly felt. Setbacks in North Africa, along with later defeats in the Far East by Japanese forces, almost brought Great Britain to her knees. It was in this pessimistic environment that the pugnacious character of Prime Minister Winston Churchill shone, and that would pave the way for W.E. Fairbairn to once again put his talents and knowledge to effective use. Churchill's defiant statement to set Europe ablaze was the rallying call for the kingdom's new special forces, including the Special Operations Executive, the SOE, and the Commandos, to begin operations that would strike at the heart of the enemy with daring, guile, and audacity. Fairbairn was tasked with the responsibility of using his codified system of hand-to-hand fighting to turn the men of these agencies into deadly hand-to-hand combat experts. The deadliest teacher. Fairbairn and other hand-picked instructors began to teach these elite forces. He would also go on to develop and pass on a variety of more sneaky methods for dealing with an enemy, which were grouped under the moniker of silent killing. In March 1942, Fairbairn was assigned to Special Training School No. 103, otherwise known as Camp X in Canada, where he passed on his methods to a variety of special operatives. He would also go on to instruct US personnel at a secret training camp in Maryland, known as Area B. This camp was one of several schools that were set up to train men assigned to the Office of Strategic Services, the OSS. Legacy. By the war's end, Fairbairn had reached 60 years of age. He would live until 1960, whence he passed peacefully at his home in England. William Ewart Fairbairn is rightly considered a father of 20th century combatives. Most English and American special forces adopted his methods, which to some degree are still in use today. His system, as espoused in DEFENDU, worked. As he said himself, his DEFENDU training made it possible for a person of average strength and skills to take on and defeat a stronger opponent. Fairbairn's vast knowledge and experience in the use of the knife, bayonet and club were almost unparalleled. His systematic approach to close quarters use of the pistol was completely novel and is also valid to this day. But what do you think? Does William Fairbairn deserve the title Father of Combatives? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching and see you next time.